Hello everybody, I'm back. This is part 8 of the significance of Playgirl magazine and Kubrick's The Shining. We are looking at the January 1978 issue of Playgirl magazine. This is the magazine we see Jack Torrance reading in towards the beginning of the movie. What this installment is basically a continuation of part 7. Now recall from part 7 we decoded a letter that is found on page 8 of that issue of Playgirl magazine. And the letter that was decoded was the letter up there in the top left, Costanza's job. It turned out that this letter was actually written by Jack Nicholson, and recall in part 7 I pointed out that his real name was John Nicholson, and here is the complete message here, as you can see. And I'll just briefly summarize the important points here. What we learned was that the Taliesin massacre, the real mover and shaker behind that event was Nathaniel, the wife of Nathaniel Charles Rothschild, her name was Rosika Rothschild. Her maiden name was Edel von Wertheimstein. She paid apparently quite a bit of people, not just Herbert Fritz, but apparently also the sheriff, John T. Williams, and presumably his deputies and so forth, to carry out this massacre. And furthermore, apparently it was her idea to have Julian Carlton somehow ingest acid and eventually starve to death. So I suggest you go back and watch part 7 to refresh your memory, but that was the main gist of the message here that we got from Nicholson. Now, the main purpose of this video is to decode statements from Stanley Kubrick, which expand on the message that we got from Jack Nicholson. And for starters, I want to go back to the letter that we see in Playgirl magazine from page 8. Note that that italicized text below the Costanza's job letter. Now, ostensibly, this is some comments from the editors of Playgirl magazine. However, recall from part 6 of this series, in which a letter from Scatman Crothers was decoded, there was also some italicized text from the editors there, as you can see here. And it turned out that this text was from Stanley Kubrick, in which he expanded upon and gave some context to the decoded message which Scatman Crothers provided us. And so, with that in mind, the purpose of this video installment is to decode the italicized text seen beneath the letter from Jack Nicholson. And so what I've done here is I've highlighted in green the text we're going to decode, and I've included Jack Nicholson's message there in the top right, as you can see. Now, when you look at this block of text to decode, one thing immediately in my mind comes to the foreground, and that is the sheer amount of text that we're dealing with. Now compare this amount of text with the italicized text from part 6, and you'll see that there's significantly more here to deal with. Now, if you're Stanley Kubrick and you want this text to be decoded by anybody, really, you need to make it manageable. You need to make it so that there's not too much text to deal with. And so what I'm getting at here is that I'm asserting that this text needs to be divided up into at least 2 sections. And what I want to do is I want to spend the next few minutes justifying that assertion to you and showing you that there is a sort of deterministic and objective way to go about determining how to divide this text. Now, I want to emphasize that this assertion on my part that this text is to be divided into 2 sections is not based on a guess. It's based on my belief that Kubrick is following the lead which Frank Lloyd Wright established when he wrote his autobiography. Now, I've decoded messages from Frank Lloyd Wright's autobiography in other video installments here. And having gone through that process and having looked through other sections of his book and examining carefully what Kubrick is doing, I've come to the conclusion that what Frank Lloyd Wright is basically using the letters of his name in his autobiography to indicate, to give clues as to where certain messages begin and where they end. And I want to spend the next few minutes here illustrating what I'm trying to talk about. What I've done here is I've listed in alphabetical order all of the letters which compose the name Frank Lloyd Wright. And what I've done there on the left is I've highlighted in red the first occurrence of each of those letters. Now, take note of the fact that section 1 is composed of 3 sentences, and the very last letter which is highlighted is the letter K there. As you can see, it's highlighted in a red rectangle. This letter occurs in the 3rd sentence, and so what I'm saying is that this is the sort of thing that Frank Lloyd Wright is doing in his book. He's using the letters of his name to indicate, to block off, if you will, text which is supposed to be decoded. He's using the letters of his name as a way to separate one block of text from another to be decoded. Now, part of the problem here is that this is sort of a subjective and complex thing to try to explain, and as I'm sitting here composing this video, I can't help but feel that I'm just not doing a very good job in conveying what I want to convey. So instead of fastidiously showing you various examples that I've seen, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to ask for your indulgence here. I'm going to ask you to give me the benefit of the doubt, and what I'm going to do in future videos is, when I come across a situation like this, is I'm just going to show you by example, which I think is the easiest way to go. In fact, the very next video, which I will shortly put out, I will illustrate what I'm talking about. In the very next video I'm going to do after this one, I'm going to decode a message from Frank Lloyd Wright's book, his autobiography, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So in the meantime, just bear with me and give me the benefit of the doubt, and I will try to prove to you what I'm talking about. I'll try to illustrate to you this concept here, which I'm trying to illustrate not very well. But anyway, with that, let's move on to the decoding process. So I'm going to start with section 1 here, and as you can see, I've taken section 1 and I've broken it down by letters. The frequency, I'm showing the frequency with which each letter of the alphabet appears in this section there on the far right. And the object, as usual, is to rearrange these letters into the message that Kubrick wants to show us. With this task in mind, what I've done here is I'm showing you Jack Nicholson's message from part 7. And it's reasonable to assume that Kubrick is going to do what he did in the situation with Scatman Crothers, with the Scatman Crothers letter. That is, he's going to offer us some background context. He's going to expand or contextualize on this subject here. And so, with that in mind, we can expect that this message from Kubrick will touch on things such as, Julian Carlton and Sheriff Williams, and especially Roscoe Rothschild. So with these things in mind, this is the decoded message with which I came up with. So first of all, take note of the fact that the numbers, the blue and red numbers match. That's always important. And starting with the first paragraph there, Kubrick is referring to something which, when you read narratives of the Taliesin massacre, everybody seems to be so puzzled about, and that is, how could Julian Carlton, or how could one person cause so much carnage? How could one person kill so many people? Recall that 7 people were killed, and they were a fair distance apart. And Kubrick here is referencing that. He's saying, that, yeah, that's something that has puzzled a whole lot of people. And what he's telling us is that, in fact, it wasn't just one person. It wasn't Julian Carlton. It was a group of people. It was Herbert Fritz acting in conjunction with Sheriff Williams and his accomplices. And just quickly as an aside, you see the term unicorn there. That's a reference to the unicorn which we see on the Rothschild family crest. Now, in the third paragraph there, we see Kubrick reinforcing what we saw from Nicholson's letter, which is that Julian Carlton's so-called attempt at suicide by drinking acid was really Rosika's plan. It was apparently her idea for that to happen. So let's move on to section number 2 of Kubrick's message. As you can see, I'm doing the same thing here. I'm taking that italicized text and I'm breaking it down in terms of letter frequency. And so what I want to do is rearrange these letters into the second portion of Kubrick's message. And here is the result at which I arrived. In the first paragraph there, Kubrick is doing something that he's done previously in other messages. That is, he's warning us that the Rothschilds basically own our country. They own our politicians. They own our government. And here he's saying that the Rothschilds basically own our media. And he's basically making the point that we live in a plutocracy. And I've touched on this previously in other video installments. And furthermore, in the final paragraph there, Kubrick is he's reinforcing what Nicholson said previously, which is that Rosika had Julian's wife, Gertrude. He had her killed, basically. Recall that Gertrude, after she was released from jail, she simply disappeared, and nobody knows what happened to her. Well, now we do know what happened to her. She was murdered by Rothschild goons. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is that last item at the very end there in parentheses, W book, page 51. What Kubrick is doing here is he is pointing us to Frank Lloyd Wright's book, on specifically to page 51. Now, recall earlier I referred to a video which I'm going to put out directly after this one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to decode the message that Kubrick is directing us to on page 51. There's a message on Frank Lloyd Wright's autobiography, page 51, and I'm going to decode that message for you. And that's the very next thing I'm going to come out with. And in that video installment, I will describe to you, I will show you how Frank Lloyd Wright is using the letters of his name to block off sections of messages to be decoded. Again, coming soon. So at this point, I think it's worthwhile to show Kubrick's message in total. And there it is. You can pause and read it if you like. But at this point, what I want to do is I think it's really worthwhile to put Nicholson's and Kubrick's messages side by side. As you can see, I've done that there. And also here, you can look at them and compare and contrast them side by side. So that's all I have for this installment. As usual, what will follow at the end is an index of the various video installments that I've done on this subject, and I'm also going to include a summary of the decoded messages. So until my next video, stay tuned, and thanks for watching, and have a nice day.